Suggestions?
As it relates to the conditional use, no, I have no further comments.
This time, as you see on our agenda, if any residents have a question or wish to make any comments, please, we need you to come up to the microphone. You're welcome to come up and talk, even if you weren't sworn in. If you're just giving opinions, you don't need to be sworn in for that, as far as I'm concerned. But if you try to get the testimony to dispute some facts, then you'd have to be sworn in first. Are there any residents that would like to make any comments? Please, you have to come up to the microphone.
I just got a quick question for Jonathan.
Everybody can hear you, that's fine.
I'll call you out. Does everybody hear me?
Candy needs your name for the record, please.
Dennis Sluchak,
And address.
47 Brudovich Road, Kingsville. Jonathan, before Mr. Cassiola stopped you, your last negotiations with Mr. Sabatino in 2014 was for how much?
Wait a minute. I don't know that
Come on, Tom.
amounts.
He was going to disclose the information.
It doesn't matter.
It's just a number.
No, you can't answer that.
What?
Just go
This is
ahead.
a public hearing, and they're having a public meeting.
Nothing to do with our finances. None of our business and none of your business.
Oh, maybe it is.
Well, then you do what you have to do about it. So what's the other question?
That's the only question I had, Tom.
All right. All right, anybody else? Any comments? Or how about board members? Applicants there to answer any questions or clarify anything that you may need clarified?
Who is the landowner that this tower?
Make sure they can hear.
Who's the landowner where this tower is being placed at or relocated?
Duncan Nichols.
What's the distance between the current tower and the new?
Cindy, speak up.
I think the distance is about 570 feet.
What's the point if I have to sit here and hold it? No.
Clip on your beard. No, I wasn't talking to you.
I'll remember that.
I think it's 576 feet is what pops into my mind. I think I read that today when I was going over the materials.
501, sorry.
576 feet. It's pretty close.
From a grading perspective, is it on the same level as the current tower? Lower, higher?
I believe the grade is lower. In addition to the tower itself being more stout, it is on a lower grade than the present tower.
And it picks up, so it's lower, it's shorter, and it picks up the same coverage?
Yes.
Close. I mean, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, it won't be the exact same.
It's not going to be exactly the same. It likely will be small, slightly smaller footprint.
So correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm truly not trying to be argumentative, just trying to fully understand. Do you want me to stand up and scream? I'll pretend
Yes.
like I'm talking to my children. One of the arguments of the ordinance change was that the location made a huge difference as far as where it sat, topographically, and height of the tower was a huge deal. But it seems to me like you're moving this farther away, 500 and some feet. You're making it lower, and it sits in the lower, and yet it still has the same coverage.
Well, sometimes movements can make a big difference. And sometimes they don't make as much of a difference. And I think that that's what the situation is here, that the movements are not as critical here. Sometimes you can move them 150 feet and you can lose a signal because, we're talking about a signal going out in each direction to the other towers that are in the network. So sometimes you can make those moves and there's overlap and it covers. Other times you can make those moves and it does not work. It's not an exact science. And the real reason for moving it here, quite frankly, is to get with a landlord where Crown can have a long-term lease and know they can have the tower there for the next 15 years.
So it's a business decision, true?
It's a business decision in the sense that if Crown doesn't get a new site and has to go year to year, and the current landlord calls them up tomorrow because he's unhappy with them, and says, you've got to go, they have a real problem.
Right, I understand. I just, in considering both things, that seemed like an issue that was really being pushed, and yet you're minimizing the change, but there is a change.
Yeah, a lot of it depends upon what the surrounding topography is. Sometimes you can move, there's no problem. Other times you move, there is a problem. And it can be a small distance that you can move. And maybe from one of the towers that's out in the network somewhere, it just moves it far away enough from that site that now it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't hand off signals to that particular tower.
And Cindy, can I just add also, again, I think another argument that we made previously was that we're very restricted in terms of what our options even are as far as alternate sites. So is this...
How so?
Well, just from a lot size and a height size, and not necessarily related to this, but this particular property from several different angles was our best option. It's not an ideal solution, it's not an exact replacement, but it was close enough at this particular location, like Bob said, that the customers that were impacted were okay with it. They weren't thrilled about it, but it still met their need closely enough that they were okay with it. But it's not like we're apples for apples here and they're saying, yeah, this is great, we're getting the same coverage, blah, blah, blah. That's not what's
I
happening.
get that. I mean, I get that the driving force behind this is really a lease, a long-term lease.
Yeah.
And there is, the setback issue is a very real issue, obviously, because you find another property and the first thing you have to do is figure out, okay, and you understand, I know you understand this, where on that property can I put that where I meet all the required setbacks, I can still propagate a signal, I can make a deal with the landowner. And that's basically what it is.
That's why you guys get paid.
I'm sorry?
That's why you guys get paid the big bucks.
I guess.
I don't know who you know.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, maybe this would be directed to Chris though, but the lot consolidation plan versus the subdivision, is that in fact criteria that, do you agree with his answer, or you and Bruce? His statement, the gentleman's name that was a neighbor up to the north there, that was here that proposed that question.
Yes.
His concern was that he could have a subdivision there, correct?
Oh, he's free to subdivide his property.
Okay.
Yes.
So what was his main
Well, I quite frankly, I think, and I understand this, he didn't want to see any tower at all there. He didn't want to see it in a different place than where it is right now. His argument was, hey, you're less than 1,000 feet from the subdivision, so that means you can't put it where you're proposing to put it. When we looked into that issue, because we thought we had covered that before we ever got this far, when we looked into that issue, we realized that the reason that we had looked at it and determined there was no problem is because, in fact, it is not a subdivision, it's a lot consolidation as opposed to a subdivision.
But I think the question was to Chris, can you concur with his legal perspective?
his findings? Yeah.
Maybe that's something we'll discuss in executive session or in legal determination as to whether that's how we interpret it. I don't want to give a legal opinion that could constitute for interpretive communication at this time.
I just wanted clarification, but maybe we should bring it up there. Excuse me, the other issue was, I see 199-foot tower, and it's nearly 200 feet from the neighboring property that way and 200 that way. Have there been studies that show that when a tower would collapse, it falls straight down and doesn't go sideways, or are those bordering properties in any jeopardy that a tower could topple over and be 1 foot from a property line?
I think most of the studies that you would look at would reveal that towers typically, first of all, they don't fall over very often. Doesn't mean it would be a never situation. But because of the foundations and the strength at the bottom of the tower, when those towers do fail, they tend to fail about 2/3 of the way up, and they generally fall into themselves because they're being anchored into the ground by the concrete foundations that are very deep. The steel's very strong. That's where the legs are at their widest. So for them to just sort of snap off the bolts of the foundation, it's just not the way it happens.
So very slim to none chance that that tower would fall over and be on a neighboring parcel.
Agreed, yes.
And on that same note, what would be a cause that would allow 3/4 of the way up to snap, or what is it, the
I think
metal that gives the?
You could have some type of a weather event that would just, be just out of this world.
I would say you need a tornado or something out of the usual, unforeseen act of God. It's a civil engineer calculation, so we take the wind mass, we put topo, exposure, everything, all the loading on it, and then safety factor and everything. It's kind of walking this building, you never know it's going to collapse really under, but same.
How often do they fall in? I know that's a
I would say rarely.
What's rarely, like 2?
Well, we have 40,000 tower sites. I investigated about, I would say, the past 10 years of Crown Castle data. Saw about 100 sites-ish. And this was the main causes of tornado passing in on the tower, exactly on the tower. Or out of the norm, ice storm or something like that.
I think we need your name for the record.
Yeah, Antoine St. Jean, 2008 White Oak Circle.
Sorry. I wanted this big song. You can't hear me, so yeah. It was great.
I'm sorry, I forgot Antoine was here. I was playing the engineer when I have one here.
You did a good job.
Eric, for those of you here. Frank, all right, there being no further testimony, we'll consider this hearing closed and we will act on it in our upcoming public meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing's wrong.